The parking area, we're going to have some pervious pavement, so that means it's pavement that's firm. Okay, some of the walkways will be firm, you can walk on them, but if you pour water on them, it will go through them. Okay, the idea there is it gives us a firm walking surface, but it can also drain to the soil. We're going to have things called bioswales. Okay, if you look out during a heavy rain, you can see water. I'm sure at the school or in your yard, right? Places where it pools or places where it's like, hey, there's like a stream in my backyard. Anybody see this kind of stuff? So we're going to take advantage of the natural landscape and manipulate it a little bit, but create areas that retain water and channel water, not channel like a stream, but allow it to sort of percolate through the soil. A thing called a bioswale is, we've got a little indentation here. We're going to have plants that like living in wet soils here. We're going to have, going around the building, some rain gardens. Have you heard of rain gardens? Okay, so there's areas around this building that are low, and they collect water, so we're going to grow plants that love that habitat. The idea there is that the water is no longer a problem, and the plants help to drink it up, all right, and return it to the air. Kind of keep it in the natural water cycle instead of the accelerated water cycle. The accelerated water cycle is water hits a road, starts going really fast, hits a storm drain going really fast, hits a stream going really fast, and boom, we have an erosion problem in the stream. So a lot of rainwater harvesting. This also includes on the roof a green roof. Have you heard of green roofs? Okay, so a little bit on this whole, okay, I'm going to go back here for a second. So the roof itself, it looks, look, there's green stuff up here. So we have re-engineered this a little bit. We're actually pitching the roof a little steeper, and we're putting photovoltaics on there. With the original center, we were able to produce about 90% of our energy. We hope to get 100% with this expanded facility. The idea of the green roof is it slows the water's journey down. A big heavy rain, it's going to kind of bypass it, but a lighter rain slows the water down so it's not like shooting into the systems. And that involves all kinds of things. A big green roof requires a lot of metal and support because you've got a layer of, I don't know what the base is, but it's got to be very strong because you're holding up some thin membranes, but then you're holding up essentially soil. And when that soil gets saturated, that's a lot of water sitting on your roof. So we are going to have a small green roof on the building. We are also going to have a feature in the front part of the building. Did I take that down? Even though this looks like a sunny day, there's water pouring off the roof. That won't happen on a sunny day. But this whole new wing is going to gather rainwater and send it into a cistern. So we're going to collect the rainwater. When that fills up, it goes right to a big rain garden along the whole front of the building. The cistern is not a new idea. Actually, at the watershed, I lived in an apartment that had a cistern out in front. There's a cistern by the barn, so people used to recognize water's a resource, we need to keep it. So we're going to gather that rainwater, and then we're going to use it as gray water. Familiar with that term? No? So we're not going to pump it up for you to drink, because there might be birds leaving stuff on the roof, right? And, but we are going to use it. Right? If you are using the restroom, the water is going to come out in there. So we'll pump it. We also will be gathering water, and here there's a little awning that has something called evacuated tubes. Evacuated tubes will help us to heat the water. So we're going to be recycling water from the environment and using it for our sinks. So that's pretty exciting. So a lot of thought has gone into this. Energy systems in the building. We're going to be using geothermal. We're going to have 14 geothermal wells. So the idea is we're going to use the earth to help heat and cool the building depending upon the season. We're going to have photovoltaic to help provide electrical needs. We're going to have something called diurnal ducts, which is a ventilation system that helps to keep climate control. So these are all systems that cost a lot to put in, but then they help to manage your climate without a lot of input from fossil fuels, all right? Green roof, solar hot water system, photovoltaic. Woohoo. Okay, so I got through all these systems. Okay, I have no idea how we are on time. How am I on time?
They have, what, about 24 minutes left of class.
Okay. So here's this brand new building. One thing hasn't changed. The Watershed Association is about clean water and healthy habitats. All right? But what has changed is the world is getting a little more complicated. All right? What's the biggest issue that you guys think we're facing in the environment right now?
Pollution and global warming.
Okay, so pollution's been around. When I was younger than you guys, that was, boy, 1968. I can remember everything was, TV commercials were about the environment getting degraded. Postage stamps, I remember there were things, Keep America Beautiful. 1970 was a big year for the Environment, Clean Water Act. There was this great awareness that we were trashing where we live. So that problem's around, but part of the trash that is really impacting the planet is this notion that, you know what, I want to have everything I want, right? So if that means drive 100 miles to go to work, I can do that. Or if that means keep my lights on all the time, I can do that. If it means have a house with a 20-foot cathedral ceiling, I can do that, because then I'm heating everything above my head. I'm not condemning all that, but there's a side effect. We're using a lot of energy, we're putting a lot of effluent, we're putting a lot of chemicals into the air, a lot of CO2, and we're creating something called the greenhouse effect. So this idea of global warming or climate change is real. It's fun to read in the paper. If you read about politics, politics doesn't want to believe it's real, but scientists know that it's happening. And what we're seeing now is dramatic changes in weather patterns, and ultimately what they're projecting is, a rise of sea level. Now, that's not going to matter if you live right here. I mean, it's not going to affect me directly right here, but it's going to affect all of us, because it means a lot of the places that generate jobs and that we might visit, et cetera, are going to be underwater eventually. So this is a big thing. So we want to, how does that fit in with the watershed's goals of clean water and healthy habitats? Well, I'll tell you what, we need to start to address this. So this building's going to address this notion of climate change by trying to address our ecological footprint, environmental footprint, right? We don't want our carbon footprint. We don't want to be big contributors to the CO2 issue. That's a new level of stuff we want to communicate. A lot of what we communicate is about ecological systems, about healthy water. We want to be able to communicate some more sophisticated things for a higher audience. So that's part of the problem that you guys are posed with. How can we as an organization reach a new audience? And it might be about the system, but some of you might be working on another approach on that. So I want to turn it back to you guys at this point. I'll answer some questions, then I'm going to ask you guys a few questions. Anybody have any questions? So, who's brave here? Who can tell me what they're thinking about in terms of how to address this project? Has anybody got an outline? I mean, have you had to have an outline done or anything done yet? Does anybody want to share what they're thinking of doing?
This is a good opportunity if you got just even some brainstorm ideas. There's no wrong answers here. Ben, you want to share?
I have a question.
Uh-huh.
All right, let's hear the question.
About the tubes that you're using.
I'm sorry, the what?
The tubes.
The evacuated tubes? Yeah.
So they're going to be taken from the green roof?
No, the evacuated tubes will be right here. And I have to confess, I don't think they're coming from the green roof. I think they're coming from the cistern. So the cistern's going to collect off a different part of the roof. Yes, sir?
How deep do the geothermal go? How deep do it?
Well, that's a really good question, because when I did some basic research, when I heard we were doing geothermal, I was reading about this. It did sound like they need to go deep. Ours are going 400 some feet deep. I think there's 14 wells. So I know one of those people I know a lot, or a little about a lot, maybe that's the way to put it. I'm not an energy specialist, but I do know that that seemed deeper than most of what I was reading about. And I will also say, if I'm guessing if you Google geothermal, you're probably going to find a lot of things that relate to Iceland, where you've got magma closer to the surface of the earth, and they're sort of tapping the energy of the heat energy of the earth like that. This is almost like the opposite. We're tapping the cool energy of the earth. Yes?
So in the diagram, the blueprints, so you
Yes.
mentioned that there were some classrooms, some labs, some sort of different areas. What are some things that typically go on in those rooms? At what level
Okay.
do you
Well,
usually work
this is,
with?
this is a great opportunity for us to have high school students say, hey, here's what I think. Now, my job isn't to, well, my job is to actually receive that information. I'd be really interested to know what you think. Not because any of you are experts on environmental centers, but because you're all creative beings and you're teenagers. And I remember being a teenager, but man, it was a long time ago. So the game plan right now, and the game plan can really flex because we're still trying to get the nuts and the bolts. So I'm going to start down here because this is brand new for us, being able to have an actual lab like the school has. But the lab, the lab, I promise you, won't look like this. It's going to be smaller than this. But basic lab here, the vision is that our team of volunteers, our staff, will have equipment they can use to conduct water quality analysis. That includes microscopes for looking at macroinvertebrates. Part of that water quality analysis is looking at the different organisms that live in the stream and identifying them to family level. So there will be some resources there for identification. There will be some equipment for that. We also plan on using this with schools. We don't know exactly what that looks like, but what we do think that looks like is being able to have video microscopes. Do you guys have anything like that? If you're looking at a microscope in this one, can you project that?
I think we have the ability to do it in a couple of the rooms.
So the idea is, if I want to, if this meant, well, I don't think we'd be able to have this many kids in the lab, but I don't know what the cutoff ended up being, but maybe a dozen, which is maybe half a class is what the notion was, that unit. I could say, hey, everybody take a look in this microscope, one at a time, right, to look at this organism. No, boom, we can project it up so everybody can see this, while they're also using their own microscopes to look at the same features. So this will be used for, and then also chemical analysis of local waters. We also breed, no? Well, yeah, we do bacterial testing, which means we take water samples. We have to see what's growing, so we'll be doing some of that. I'm not sure how students fit into that. So that's the lab. So the lab, we're scheming ideas. That might be an avenue you want to take with this project. Hey, how can this organization use that? And there's no such thing as a bad idea, right? Because this, I mentioned the original building, there was a group of what we call leadership staff who worked with, I turned to my staff, said, okay guys, let's dream. And then I brought them to another table with leadership staff, said, hey, here's some of our dreams, right? That's called brainstorming. And it's a good process. It's a great process as long as you're not too, possessive. In other words, you put an idea out there, don't be afraid to have it pushed aside. So that's a role I see you guys playing. So maybe you focus on the lab. Here's a classroom. Classroom, I'll be honest, we have 930 acres. Guess what I call the classroom? 930 acres. I've got forest, I've got fields, I've got wetlands, I've got a river, I've got a stream, I've got a pond. That's my classroom. But, having said that, if we want to start with some basics, I need to be able to utilize this to teach. So, computer stations, maybe in here, some way to communicate with a whiteboard, smartboard, whatever we're calling this here, can be divided in half. So this space will be used with some of our public programming, which are generally, at this point, younger kids, but also for students such as yourself. Exhibit space right now, the focus will retain some of the old Nature Center material, so meet a snake, meet a turtle, we'll have a place where these animals can live. We'll have some exhibits. We'll have some new exhibits looking at water, addressing some issues with water, highlighting the water cycle, looking at the side effects of too much impervious surface. And those are topics we're really interested in, but I don't know, are they going to work? Anybody here go to museums, either through school or family or fun? Anybody been to Liberty Science Center? Liberty Science Center has some exhibits on water. How about Academy of Natural Sciences? That's in Philly. That's near Franklin Institute. So some of these centers, they're doing the same thing, but they're big old museums. We're much smaller, and that's going to be the challenge for us. So displays in here, and this will be displays as well, but a little bit more of an orientation. We do know there's going to be a watershed map in here. There's going to be a timeline of the organization. This has changed a little bit, but in this corner there's going to be a way for us to do video presentations. For instance, typical school group comes out, field trip, right? Your elementary school, did you have field trips? You went out to do, kids get off the bus, we meet them, greet them, orient them, boom, we head out on the trail. Well, we're going to start by heading through the building. And part of their orientation will be a brief presentation on screen, very brief. As you can see, I'm not a big screen person. I brought paper. So maybe this is the way to address it. I don't know how you define the project, so please correct me as I state this. We're open. I love the notion that you guys are trying to scheme and plan and plot for us. And it can look very different. Some of you might have an approach. I think, Jeff, you could teach this, or you could teach this topic this way, or you could say, hey, I think this topic, the fact that you have a green roof could mean you could have this other display in the building, or with a new lab and knowing that you're about water, you could do this. Right? So it's wide open as far as I'm concerned. You've set up the boundaries, I'm sure, because it's your class.
Mm-hmm.
But
I think you gave us more than I think I put out in the document to you guys. So
maybe too much.
Well, I mean, I don't think there's ever too much, but some of the ideas, I think it gives you a lot of sort of room to think about. Do you want to create something that could be sort of a hands-on labby kind of activity, something outdoors, something in the classroom, some sort of video presentation, an exhibit?
I see a couple of hands. Let me just add one more thing, and then I'll start with you. One thing I failed to mention is when you come to this site, right now, there's a giant fence around all this. Right about here is a butterfly house, which is a seasonal hoop house. And it's a native plant garden, and we raise native butterflies. Just read this weekend, how many of you saw monarch butterflies this summer? There were not many monarchs. We raised a bunch. But I just saw a report in the New York Times that the roost down in Mexico, on the Day of the Dead, there's a part of the community that believes that the monarch butterflies who are returning to this roost represent the souls of the dead. And last year was the record low number of butterflies that returned to the roost, and that was about 60 million. Big number, right? I don't know how you count 1, 2, 3, 4, right? But they have some way to estimate. This year, thus far, 3 million. So there is a major collapse possibly happening. We don't really know. We know there's a lot of factors affecting insects, from the way we grow crops to the things we put in the atmosphere. So anyway, the butterfly house, it turns out, oh my gosh, how are we going to use this? It's actually going to be here now. And we use that as a tool. And clean water butterflies, what's the connection? Well, the connection is butterflies are great ambassadors of the environment, and like the environment, they're fragile. We think the environment can put up with anything, right? Let's plow, let's put in a new road, let's build a new school. I'm not saying any of these things are bad, but we've got to really start to think about how to do that. You have your hand.
For the labs and like the classrooms and stuff, how are kids going to be able to get these programs? Like, is it through public schools?
Good question. So there's a number of ways that we can do it. And one way that we currently interface with people is we do have public programs. So if we wanted to do something, a junior scientist program or something, we could just set this up for the public and offer this. I'm envisioning for students this age, what do I want to call it? Not an institute, well, I'll just call it that, like a watershed institute, right? Where high school students come out for a week to learn about water quality. Now, I don't know if that interests you guys. My idea is, this is like a feather in your cap. It's accelerated learning. It's a little fun. It's sort of like outdoor. It's like school. You're learning, but it's outdoors. But boom, that anything goes. There's a lot of ways different centers do this. You could go out and start Googling what environmental centers do, or phrases, teaching about water quality or teaching about habitat. You'll get a whole different array. But it doesn't mean we can't make something up. Does that help?
Yeah.
Okay. But back to the schools, definitely. We want to figure out how to interface with the schools, and we've worked with a couple of science supervisors to get input about how schools operate. Schools are changing all the time, and it's been a tough, I hate to say, marketplace, but it's been hard for us to maintain relationships with schools because now with assessment, everything has really changed. You had your hand up in the back there, yes?
Yeah, I think something cool you could do was you could show the kids an ecosystem, and you could have them make a choice of what to take out. Like say they want to take out a consumer, you should have things that show them what would happen, like what would play out in different scenarios.
So is this is an exhibit, for instance,
Yeah.
or it sounds like electronics?
Yeah, it could be like on the computer, like click
Okay.
on a panther,
All right.
and see what happens.
So we've already done that. We've got rid of the Panthers. But no, I like the idea. And so if you're just throwing that out there for everybody to reflect on, great. But I hope somebody throws that back at us, as a presentation. And I'll be honest, I'm old school. I feel like if I want to turn you guys into people who really care about the environment, I feel the most powerful tool is the environment itself. Now, having said that, everybody who works for me is younger than me. So they're the ones telling me, Jeff, get your iPhone, check this out, look what you can do, look at this app. I don't think that way, but when you show me this, there's some really cool apps I do use, Journey North and Nature Watch. I'm, again, just trying to learn this stuff. But there's definitely, we got to use the technology that's out there. That's how people are learning and communicating. You do have your hand up, yes?
Yeah.
Okay.
Would you guys do advertisements and stuff, like billboards and YouTube stuff?
So we do, our marketing is often through newspapers, but yeah, we have to reach people, and anything could go. We haven't done billboards before, probably because they're just really pricey. But yeah, marketing is very key, because if people don't know we're there, they're not going to use our service.
And you're a nonprofit, right?
We are a nonprofit.
So that's important. So it's not like you have a ton of money to spend on.
So that is one of our limiting factors. And one of the things is, we whittled down a $12 million project to $7.5 million, right? And now we trust me, I'm looking at the stuff we sort of pushed aside, saying, okay, how is, we want to get, for instance, an all-surface trail, so that if you're a mom or a dad and you've got a stroller, or you're an older person and you really can't, or it doesn't matter whether you're an older person, you're physically kind of impeded from walking across a rustic, rooted, uneven surface. Boom, here's a surface that's nice and flat. We could have someone out there with a walker, whatever. That's part of the plan that we don't have enough money to do that right now. So there's always this kind of scheming. Yes?
I think it'd be kind of cool if you guys made your own app that summed up the entire program, I guess.
Yeah, I would love to have somebody, and whenever I have a computer problem, it's great, because having kids, all I have to say is, oh, I've got this issue, and there's laugh, right? Do you laugh at your parents? Maybe your parents aren't as old as me, but that's the response I get at home. It's like, it basically means you're an idiot. And then they solve my technology issue. Absolutely, I would love to be able to turn something like that loose on somebody and say, help make this app. Because there's creative people in environmental centers who keep scheming up stuff. You could be part of that scheming. That would be a great idea.
Love it.
Yes.
Are the people that are teaching the kids, are they the volunteer ambassadors or are they the staff?
Well, okay. So I have a staff that works for me. So most of us have